let's talk number sense. So, just what is number sense? Mathisfun.com, which is a website you can use to find out a whole lot of different math topics. Website, it's got exercises, practice problems, and as you can see here, definitions. So mathisfun.com explains number sense to be a person's ability to use and understand numbers, knowing their relative values, how to use them to make judgments, how to use them in flexible ways when adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, and how to develop useful strategies when counting, measuring, or estimating. The most basic method for understanding number sense usually starts with a number line. Pretty much every elementary school classroom that I've ever been in has had a number line. Sometimes they ignore these negative numbers down here, but I've seen a lot of number systems or number lines that have had negative numbers recently, so that's a good thing. One of the most basic activities that students might do to kind of initially understand that idea of number sense is to put a finger on a number line. My favorite thing to do, though, with students would be to have a giant size number line. So, to create a number line that's so big that they can actually stand on it. You could do this with string. You could put down masking tape and mark off equal increments. Go outside, grab a piece of sidewalk chalk, and put a bunch of number lines down on the playground or in front of your school. If you're going to do it in your classroom, double check with your custodians first that putting masking tape down is okay, because mine didn't quite care for it much. You, of course, can always do individual number lines. One way to make them so that the students can draw all over them, take a number line, make a bunch of copies of the paper. You can even put it on something fun and colorful, and slide it inside a sheet protector and give the students expo markers or dry erase markers, and they can write all over that sheet protector without actually writing on the paper, so you can reuse them a whole lot. This works really well, especially if you have multiple classes. So then, how would I use a life-size number line to teach something simple, like, say, addition? So you might be wondering, why are we talking about teaching addition and teaching subtraction 7th through 12th graders? Because even in 7th through 12th grade, sometimes the students just don't get it. And especially when you move to the negative numbers, which I'm going to do here shortly, you want to make sure that they understand how addition and subtraction works with regards to the number line, so that they can kind of make sense of what's going to happen when we use negative numbers. So, let's start with something basic. For instance, 2 plus 3. So I'm going to take my little person here, and I'm going to put them on -2, just like if we had a student in the classroom, we'd have them standing on 2 or putting a finger on 2. Now we're going to add 3, so that means that the person would probably move 1, 2, 3 steps forward and end up there on 5. So our person moved forward 3 steps, ended there on 5. Maybe we want to do a second problem just to make sure that students have it. And in this case, the person would start on 4, and they're going to move forward 5 steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and land there on 9. So 9 would be our answer. So notice with addition that we're moving to the right on the number line if we're standing and kind of facing those numbers. We're moving away from 0. So if we're going to teach subtraction, we're probably going to need to move closer to 0. So if we're starting at 8, we're going to have to take our little person here, and the direction they're going to go is needing to switch. So now they're going to need to head towards their left, and we're going to subtract 6 here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so the answer of 8 minus 6 would be 2. And one more problem, just as an example. In this case, let's start at 3. But because we're doing subtraction, again, we're going to flip the direction. and we're going to go 1, 2, 3 steps, 3 hops, whatever we want to call it, towards 0, and we're going to actually land on 0. So, how does this work then when we're teaching something with negative numbers, for instance, adding? So, let's take our little person here, and we're going to start on 5. Now, the idea of a negative number is that basically everything is switched. So normally when we add, we would go to the right, but because we're adding a negative number, we're going to be forced to do the opposite of everything. That's basically what negatives are. They're just the opposites of positive numbers. So to a student, that means that instead of going to the right 2 steps, I'm now going to need to go to the left 2 steps. So I'm going to take my little person and I'm going to go 2 steps to the left. So the answer to 5 plus a negative 2 is just 3. The same idea works if, for instance, you're starting with a negative 3. Now, normally when we add positive numbers, we move up on the number line or to the right. Well, in this case, because we're adding a negative number, in this case a negative 4, get the person on the right number. In this case, because we're adding a negative 4, our person's going to have to flip direction, switch the way they're going, and instead of going to the right, they're going to need to go to the left, and we're going to go negative 4, or just 4 steps to the left. So, in this case, negative 7 plus a negative 4. So the answer, negative 3 plus a negative 4 is just negative 7. So then, I guess you're probably already thinking, how are we going to do subtraction? Works just the same. We're going to switch the direction of our person. So 5. In this case, a little of a trick problem for the students probably, because 5 minus 7, we're just subtracting, not subtracting a negative. Ooh. Need to flip in the other way here. So, because we're just subtracting, I'm just going to be moving 7 steps. But the tricky part here is that we're moving 7 steps, and we're going to end up in the negative numbers, which for students, especially when they're first learning all about the negative numbers and how to subtract, can be very difficult to understand. So, 5 minus 7, the answer is negative 2. So let's look at a problem where we're actually going to subtract a negative number. So in this case, we've got 6, and we're going to subtract a negative 2. So because we normally subtract, that means normally we go to the left. But in this case, we're subtracting a negative number. So we're going to just end up flipping ourselves back around, and we're going to actually be going to a bigger number. So we're going to end up almost adding. That's why sometimes students will say that subtracting a negative number is just like adding the opposite, or that and 6 minus a negative 2 is the same as 6 plus 2, which gives you an answer of 8. A good way to practice addition, subtraction, or in this case, I'm going to use the example of multiplication, is to use a number cube or dice. For students that have mastered through 6, or need additional practice through 6, a regular 6-sided die will work great. If you're looking for dice that have 12 sides, because you want them to practice multiplying through 12, check out Amazon, eBay, they're all over the place. You can get a 12-sided die really easily. Now the nice thing about 6-sided dice, or even if you go to Lowe's and you pick up pick up blocks of wood that are shaped like dice, you can write on the sides of those. You can also take these dice, note that they've got the numbers 1 through 6 on them, and let's say the student really hasn't mastered the 6s yet, you could cover up that side that has the 6 on it, just use a label, and you could replace it with another number that's equally tricky, say like 3 or 4, but that way they don't have to practice with 6s, if that's not what you want. Or you could cover up the 1s and make it a 7. Either way will work. So what the students could do is that they could practice multiplying, so they would roll the 2 dice, and for instance, come up with 4 and 1, they have to multiply those together. So 4 times 1 is 4. And have a little competition between themselves and a friend, and you'd be surprised how long the students will sit there and practice. Just with the addition of number cubes rather than a regular old worksheet. When you get into learning to multiply negative numbers, take one of those black dice away and replace it with a red die. In this case, I've got a black die and a red die, and you probably guessed the black die is a positive number, the red die a negative number. So if they roll the two numbers, the two cubes, you've got positive 5 times negative 1. That's a negative 5. And the students are practicing with negative numbers, multiplying. Again, you could do this whole idea as well with not only multiplication, but with addition. And a whole host of other different topics. You'd be shocked the amount of practice that students can get in with just having 2 dice or 2 number cubes to work with.